Hello. Today I am talking with Brad Kuipers, the author of Chronicles of Eldrin, Book 1, Manipulator. And before we get talking about Brad, let me tell you a little bit about him. Brad Kuipers grew up on a dairy farm in Prince Edward County, Ontario, and has always enjoyed fantasy novels and writing in general. He began writing the story at the age of 13 in an attempt to chronicle the games and stories created in the minds of his siblings and himself. Currently, Brad is living in Belleville, Ontario, with his two children, where he spends his time writing, fishing, kayaking, reading, and enjoying time with his daughters. So welcome to the show, Brad.
Thank you very much for having me, Michael.
So tell us a little bit about this Chronicles of Eldrin series and Book 1, Manipulator. What are some of the major themes in that book, and what's it about?
Well, it's a fantasy novel taking place in a world that I created myself, with major themes centered around like character versus character conflict and a lot of character versus nature conflict. Mm-hmm. The land that I created, Eldrin, the world, is a harsh world. It has multiple sentient species, and they're always vying for power. So I create this tumultuous landscape, this tumultuous setting that my characters go through in order to show sort of the level of survival and really what it takes to live in this fantasy realm.
So we're creating a canvas on which the characters can come out and develop and strive against various challenges.
Right. With the conflict being the main catalyst for their growth, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I do like the lot of character versus character conflict for sure. There's always like the name of the title of book 1 is Manipulator, and I definitely make manipulation a prevalent force in my book. There's always somebody pulling strings in the background.
So there's webs within webs.
Right. Which will become even deeper as the series goes on.
Okay. Yeah, and look at some of the writers you say inspired you, like George R. R. Martin and Orson Scott Card, and their series. Certainly they start out, especially like Orson Scott Card's Ender series, starts out fairly straightforward, and then as the books go on, it gets more into the universe and more into the depth. And so is that your intention with your series?
Absolutely. Yeah. And a very good comparison too, like with the way Orson Scott Card brings up a lot of like heavy moral dilemmas as he sort of progresses through his series is sort of a good indication or like a good parallel to what I would like to do with my writing and what I plan to do as I continue my series as well. And George R. R. Martin was another good name there. He's definitely a big inspiration for me. Just the characters he creates and all of their dynamics together and how he balances that is very impressive.
Yes, yeah, definitely a complex world, and
very much so.
Yeah, it doesn't seem so much with the moral quandaries. They just kill people, but
they really do. Yeah,
but yeah, more into the manipulation, the webs and whatnot. So we talked a little bit about them, but tell me a little bit more about your inspiration. What inspires you to write and create these kinds of stories?
A lot of my inspiration is actually history. So I've been a big history fan since I was very young, probably like 12 years old. And there's so many cool stories in history, just amazing stories that you couldn't believe happened, but they did. Mm-hmm. And just tales of humans doing things that just seemed impossible today, but they did. Yep. And that's really my inspiring force. I want to tell stories like that. They might not be real, but they could be based on things that really happen just in my own fantasy setting. So that's a lot of my inspiration. I get a lot of really cool ideas just from reading obscure history things.
Are there particular periods of history that you're particularly drawn to?
I mean, I've been drawn to pre-civilization, so sort of the hunter-gatherer cultures in history, and then like the agricultural revolution and the early Mesopotamian history and like the Sumerians and the Akkadians. And then I really like the classical Greek history. The Roman period has always been fascinating, post-Roman times, what some historians have called the Dark Ages, has always been like, honestly, I don't think there's one specific time period that I like more than others. I really enjoy the overarching scope of human history.
Yeah. The Roman era is a fascinating time for. I'm surprised I don't see more fiction written there, because it has some of the Republican, democratic political concept of the modern world without the guardrails of the modern world.
Yeah, it's true. You sort of have this sort of the ancient culture and warfare and technology, with a sense of, it wasn't even their ancient technology is similar. Like they had plumbing, they had aqueducts. It is a cool comparison to be able to make and still maintain some modern relevancy.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Definitely great form of inspiration. So tell me about what it's like to be a writer as a single dad, 2 kids. What's your life as a writer like?
It's been a struggle, really, in some ways, and it's been amazing in other ways. So the struggles just come from having to make a living. You can't to take time to write. And to work at the same time is very difficult. Working drains you of a lot of creativity, and it does take a certain amount of a fresh mind to be able to come up with, decent writing.
Yeah.
So that the struggle was the balance between work, balancing my kids, and balancing my time for writing. And eventually I was able to take a year off from working and support myself and write. And that's how I was able to write my book.
Oh, great. Yeah. And so talk about balance in terms of writing, trying to be creative, also trying to make living. So, what's that balance between trying to send a message and say something with your work versus writing to sell books and be marketable?
So the message I'm trying to send there is to definitely follow your dreams. Don't give up on your dreams. That's the thing. I wanted to be a writer before, when I was quite young, and for a long time I did give up on that as a dream because it wasn't practical. It wasn't practical in my small town community, and eventually it was always something that was nagging at me, and I just took a leap of faith and did it. And that would be the message that I want to convey is that, yeah, it takes time sometimes to build up your life, but don't give up on those dreams that you had. Like, come back to them when you can. Don't just leave them off to the wayside.
Yeah, great. That's a very, very good message. So what's next for Brad Kuipers as the writer in your writing career?
I'm working on the second novel right now. I would say I'm probably about 25% complete of my first rough draft. And I'm hoping to launch a bit of a bigger novel this time around, as I already have one out. So I'm hoping I can fit a little bit more in this time and take some more time to develop my world and the political structures and really delve into it more. So I'm really excited, actually. Every day I'm able to spend some time writing while my kids are in school, and I very much enjoy it.
That's great. Now, so you talk about kids being in school and distractions and whatnot. Talk about your process to keep the writing flowing and not get blocked. Do you get blocked, and how do you deal with that?
I do get writer's block, but I think that the best thing to do is to just push through it. There are some days where that is easier said than done. For the most part, I find that when I start writing, it'll come to me. Even if I'm not working on my current work in progress, if I'm working on a different WIP, then sometimes just the process of writing can help compound and trigger more writing. But there are just days where it's just not going to come, and sometimes you got to throw in the towel and take a day too to go for a walk or a hike or get some air and some different inspiration. But for the most part, when my kids are at school and it's quiet and I can listen to some music on my own, then that gets me in the best sort of frame of mind to be able to create worlds and balance all the stories and plots I need to balance in my mind.
That makes a lot of sense. And so talk about your illustrator for this book and the future of the illustrations.
So the illustrator is a very good friend of mine. She's a local woman, and also she's my cousin's wife. So I have an in that way. And She just does such good work, and her name is Emma Flindle. She's on Instagram, and I don't know, she's on Facebook, Instagram for sure, and she does so many of these little artistic projects that are just absolutely beautiful. And I've seen some of her work, and I wanted her to do my cover art, my map. And in the future, I want to release like a whole bestiary of all my own creatures. And I would like to release maybe like an index and some other things, and have her working with me in the future for more projects like this. She's just a very, very talented graphic artist.
Awesome. So what is next? What's coming in the future? You talked a little bit about the next book you're working on and some of the illustrations coming on, but in the bigger picture, what do you see on the horizon for your writing career?
A bigger picture, I want to release multiple trilogies in my world. So I would like to focus on different trilogies that focus on different time periods, and then each trilogy is sort of a standalone series, but within my world with reoccurring characters. So that's sort of my overarching plans with this series. And then ideally, as like a Netflix adaptation would be amazing. Something like that in the future would just be mind blowing for me to be able to see something I created on a screen. And I have two siblings who both went to university for dramatic arts, and they both have screenplay experience. So to get my work adapted to screenplay wouldn't be impossible anyway. So that's
cool.
Sort of my big like forward facing projections, which would be amazing.
That's a great concept. So if someone's they're looking at all the different fantasy books out there in the world, why should they pick up yours as opposed to any of the others?
It's a great question. I asked myself the same question sometimes. Why would somebody want to read mine? I'm a huge fan of fantasy. I love most of it, all of it that I've read. And I've read a very diverse arrangement of fantasy novels. So I have a good grasp of what I like and what works and what's there. And I try to bring in so many different facets of fantasy and bring them in and converge them all into my world. And I think that anybody who loves fantasy would be able to maybe not relate, but they would definitely see familiar things from other fantasy novels, familiar concepts brought in and hopefully utilized in a way that feels satisfying and tells a good story.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell through this interview, your passion for fantasy and your affinity to it. So you can really feel that coming off the page when you read a book like that. So any final thoughts you would like to share with the audience?
I just hope that through my writing, I can bring some form of escapism or joy or relaxation, or just maybe spark some ideas or inspiration in somebody else. That would be amazing for me.
Great. Well, so the book is Chronicles of Eldrin, Book 1, Manipulator by Brad Kuipers. If you're listening, it's Kuipers. And you can find that, of course, on the Writers Republic site, writersrepublic.com, or on Amazon, or any number of other places, I am sure. So thank you so much, Brad, for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Michael.